Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Tom. What's going on, Tom?
Hello, friends.
Also joining us this week, we are very excited to have him back on the show and talk about terrain with us, Mr. Anthony Polcastro. How you doing, buddy?
Fantastic. I think this is the first time I didn't have to blackmail myself onto the show, too, so that's a plus.
You never do. You're always welcome. Always welcome. So we're going to get into the normal stuff tonight. As I said, we're going to talk terrain. It's going to be a nice conversation about the nature of terrain in AOS, and we're going to talk a little bit about the rules, and we're going to talk about the NashCon tables, which Anthony has provided, and all sorts of stuff around that, and how we see terrain. We'll probably mention faction terrain, stuff like that. But I did just want to take a quick moment at the top of the show, if everybody will indulge me for a moment, I want to say a few words. I know we have people who watch from all over the world, but this has been a rough week for many, especially here in the U.S., and I just wanted to kind of start out by saying that I hope everyone who's watching is safe and healthy. Doing this show is an honor and a privilege, one I look forward to each and every single week. And this show is a place of escapism where we get to leave behind the cares of the real world for a few moments and have a deep and often heated discussion about silly toy soldiers, and I couldn't be happier to do it. In a week like this, however, silence is largely unacceptable. I promise we'll quickly get back to Age of Sigmar, but I just want to take a quick moment to speak about the situation in the U.S. So last week, we saw an innocent man brutally murdered on video by people who are charged with protecting and serving. And this would be disturbing in any time, but it was made all the worse by the fact that it was far, far from the first and will likely not be the last. And for the past week, here in the States and across the world, thousands upon thousands of people, both in my city and around the country, have been marching, speaking up and mobilizing against this injustice and the system that allowed it to happen. The news has showed all of this ad nauseum. Our social media is full of it, and it's overwhelming. And we see all the extreme good and all the extreme bad. And I know it's overwhelming. It certainly has been for me. But the core truth is that thousands of people are speaking up and exercising their right to push for what we can all hope for is very needed change. For all of us, the best we can do is be involved. If you can't be involved, donate. If you can't donate, then speak up. But above all, and especially if you're in a group that hasn't suffered in this way, listen. There's no more important thing you can do than listen. The simple truths in life are really those things that we all know. It's what Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street and Reading Rainbow and Captain America and Superman all taught you. Be empathetic, be humble, be brave, be forgiving, be truthful, and most importantly, be kind. So I hope that that is a short message. That's all I had to say about this. Thank you all for listening and indulging. And I hope everybody out there is safe and healthy. So that's all I wanted to say about that. And now we can return to our regularly scheduled fun and escapism. So there you go. As I mess with my camera and take my notes off. Sorry, everybody. All right, Tom, let's do the news.
It's a real hard transition.
It is a very hard transition.
to turn to a rumor engine about fascist robots.
Sure. But here we are. There's connective tissue.
There we go. We have fascist robots for our rumor engine.
Yeah, I've got it up on the screen. It's a big... Everybody's been saying it's a foot. I don't think it's a foot.
It's a terrain piece.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You don't think it's a lander? You don't think it's a lander?
No.
I could kind of see it. You're saying like an actual, not a leg, but more of like a fold-down landing piece.
Yeah. Now it's
not on a wider base.
Now it's not on a base.
Yeah.
No, the landing pad would have a wider base. If it was going to support weight, like outriggers, it would have a wider base.
Mm-hmm.
That's a terrain piece.
I tend to feel the same. Do you know what really pushes me about thinking it's a terrain piece? It doesn't. It's painted not with metallic paint.
Right.
Right? Because you can see the smoothness of the pigment, and like
Right.
whenever they edge highlight with metallic, it always looks really garbo because they use GW metallics to do it. Right?
Sure. It's true.
And so like it's clearly not actually metallic paint, even though it looks like what would be there would be metallic. Right? It also, I'll say, feels like, to Anthony's point, it feels like they photoshopped something out that was beneath it.
Right. Well, that's what I don't know. Like, did they remove a base that it's sitting on, or if they didn't remove a base, that strikes me that this is terrain. And what I mean by that, like the terrain in the vein of like the Sector Mechanicus stuff, because like the way that rim, even though there's not that mechanical joint, the way that the foot there sit is like how the feet of the Sector Mechanicus train sit.
Yeah.
Like that wider lip.
Yep.
It's okay. I just realized what this is.
All right, I'm ready.
It's Sigmar's model for the new Stormpost Chamber
coming
out.
Oh, there it is.
Sigmar himself. Problem solved. We're good to go.
There you go. Solved it. Done. No, yeah, I do feel it does feel like some kind of either piece of terrain or something that could be like a small part of a larger landing gear thing that would be painted in the colors of one of like the Space Marine chapters.
Yep.
Right? So that it's not in metallic paint, because then you would, if it's meant to be in one of those color schemes, that would explain why it's not metal paint, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
So there you go. All right, cool.
More not AOS stuff.
Correct. This has mainly been a week of 40K, but I pointed out, and the reason I put this in there, they revealed like some of the rules changes today in an article that Mike wrote, Mike Brandt. And the thing that was interesting to me about it was there was a lot. So like they kind of broke down a new scenario.
Yep.
And it made me wonder about whether or not this could be some of the same tech we see in GHB 2020. That's what interested me about it. So to explain the things that they had in there, okay?
Yep.
You scored the primary. First of all, there's a cap on how many points you can score from some of the objectives.
Interesting.
Okay. So, like, between the primary and the secondaries, there are caps to what you can actually spend. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Or, sorry, not spend. I'm sorry. Accrue.
Attain.
Attain, yes, exactly. Thank you. That's the perfect word. They also, you score the primary at the end of your command phase, which is their hero phase.
Hero phase.
Right?
Huh.
Interesting.
Which was a really interesting thing, because that means you had to, move their last turn. And obviously they have a complete you go either. They don't roll for priority like we do.
Right.
So, like, in all cases, you are going to have to move there, survive the enemy onslaught, and then you can score it. Right?
Yeah, unless you have movement in the hero phase.
Sure. Although,
like while that is less obviously in 40K, like I'm thinking from an AOS standpoint,
sure,
that suddenly changes the math.
It would make that so much different, right? Yes.
I wonder if that's why. Sorry, Vince. I wonder if that's why they switched some of the wording for like Seraphine's teleport to now happens at the end of the movement phase instead of in the hero phase like it used to be.
Right.
Maybe you're going to see a shift of things like that.
Well, it just makes me think about things like what are they called? Corn. They're
spending their blood tithe
or
in the
Iron
hero phase, or the mighty destroyers moving the hero phase.
Yeah.
Like all of that suddenly becomes way better.
Yeah, sure. The other thing I was interested to see was the other thing that was super relevant was clearly, as mentioned when we talked about the redesign of scenarios a few weeks back, and people said like, well, what about ITC or the sort of those types of secondaries, and admittedly, the way that the 40k secondaries isn't really what I was describing. Okay, there are some parallels, but what I was describing was very different in the nature of how controllable it is by the player. But it doesn't matter. The point is that the secondaries, they showed a whole bunch of the secondaries, and many of them require you to be in a place and have the unit do a thing. And when I say do a thing, I mean not fight or shoot.
Interesting.
Right? So, like, I don't remember what it was called specifically. Like siphon data or something is what it was called in the one that they sampled. The 4 pillars. And, like, the unit had to abandon certain activities it would otherwise do to quote-unquote siphon the data. Right?
Interesting.
And so I thought that was a very sort of fascinating another lever. I'm really interested and happy to see them playing with all these levers in 40k. I think this is really interesting. Obviously, I'd need to see all of it before I'd even come close to forming an opinion about whether I think it's good or bad. Right. But I can definitely say at this point I think it's interesting because it's cool that they're, sort of pulling those different tools and exploring that different game design space. Yeah. So, like, in AOS, again, this would be another thing you could easily imagine happening, right? Like, if the unit's unengaged, it can't shoot or charge this turn, but it can perform, as Sleepy just said in the comments, it can perform a ritual or do a thing, right? Or mine for gold or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. Yeah. So, could be could be some interesting harbingers of what we see. Who knows? I don't know.
I'd love if they mixed it in with the lore. And so, like, be like, you harvest Aether Gold.
Sure.
You know, like as weird and as generic as the scenarios are right now, I would love if they played, like, it doesn't add anything to add flavor text to stuff like that, right?
No, absolutely. And that was the other thing they mentioned. So there's a group of generic sort of universal secondaries and how you choose them and how you have to balance the choice of them. Right. The scenario itself has a secondary built in you can choose to use, which in the case of the 4 pillars, it was like the siphoning data thing or whatever. And they mentioned that in the future, there will be faction-specific secondaries. So, like, to just tie it back to what you just said, you could imagine that, like, the KO show up with a, harvest Aether Gold thing, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever.
It'd be fun.
So, I'm interested. That's what I'll say. I have nothing else. I don't know what else intelligent to say about it besides I think it sounds cool.
It'd be cool to see a shift in secondaries from the win mores that are in GHB now to more of, hey, GW can just, offer to buy the NashCon / community built secondaries and put that in. They seem to be fantastic.
That'll never happen.
Well, they don't need to buy them. They already
only because you're attached, Tom.
Yeah.
You piss them off every 30 seconds.
I know they actually have a copy of it, so it's fine. They can use it anytime they want, as I have directly told them. So I have released in written form the copyright or any claim to such IP, which would be questionable for me to have anyways. So there you go. Okay. So at any rate, yeah. Was there anything else? It's been a really, obviously the world is all new 40k right now, so,
Right. Like, everything is new 40k, which is funny because I canceled my pre-order this week.
What?
There you go. You were excited, and then you were like, nah, I changed my mind.
Yeah, I was excited, and, it's interesting, but, I have a lot of models. Mm-hmm. And the winds have changed, shifted in our household. With my son deciding that we're going to play Magic now.
Sure.
And so finances,
there's a whole new pitfall of
financial. Exactly. Just back up the dump truck and just start loading the cash in.
Yeah, you've got to shovel money into a different fire pit for your kids.
Right. And so no 40K. But I'm excited that it's coming, and I'm excited that other people are excited.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick up at some point. I will pick up a couple of the one or both of the big Necron characters. to paint them, just to paint them, because I think they're like the big Satan-looking dude or whatever. I think looks amazing, as does the Silent King. So like, I'll probably get those at some point just to paint them because it'd be fun to do for a competition or something, you know. So, gotta paint 40K stuff sometime. That's how competitions work. All right, cool. So, with no news, let's with no other news, let's move to some pick of the week. Anthony, what would you like to share with everybody?
So it ties into the what I'm working on that you can show later, but I got kind of a twofold thing. So the first part being my buddy, I've had kind of like hobby block recently, with the exception of printing stuff, just without having real tournaments on the horizon. I've had a hard time getting motivated to work on stuff. And my Adepticon team partner for the last couple of years, Stuart Gately, who is at Giants Among Minis on Twitter, has been sharing in our group chat just some Chaos Force that he's been working on that has kind of a Norska theme, and he converts like everything. And under his own admission, Stuart will tell you he is not the best painter, but he has been progressing and progressing and progressing. But his conversions start in his head as he builds a narrative for his army, and then he just sets out with whatever models he can find to fill that void and build them. And his conversions have just blown me away over the last month, and the stuff he's been working on. It's ignited me to do stuff, and I need to get my butt in gear with all the crap I have around here to start working on stuff. But it's been a real inspiration to me, and he's just a super cool dude. And that ties into my other part is he's also one of my Nashville guys, and currently NashCon is still on. So that could be the first U.S. tournament post-COVID. And obviously the people of Nashville, TO's David, and then the event organizers are monitoring the situation on a day-to-day basis with the hotels and everything else. And if they need to cut it, they'll have to do that. But currently, we're hoping everything can go on and everybody can see their friends again in the wonderful terrain and tables and have a grand old time playing. So I'm looking forward to that.
I mean, if assuming it moves forward, you can bet your bottom dollar I will be there. I am waiting. It was supposed to come today, but I ordered something truly fantastic for my display board for this year, and I am beyond excited about a display board.
Is this for the Whirlwind's Edge army?
Yes.
Are you going to take them to NashCon?
Yeah, I'll take them to that. Yeah, that's my army for NashCon.
This is going to be epic because I know what you were asking of me to try to print for you that I could not do. So if it's anything along those lines, I'm going to be elated to see what comes.
It's along those lines.
Are you paint judging, Vince?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're not in the running. Okay, good.
Correct. Yes.
He can win fan favorite though.
Right.
That's fan vote. But.
Yeah, I'm out for that. Yeah. It's going to be it's going to be a good go of it this year.
Well, just don't play like you would normally play, and you could, be in for that.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, the fact that I'm excited about a display board should tell you something. But there you go. All right, Tommy, what's your pick of the week?
I am gonna spruik friend of the show, Doom and Darkness. The other night, like a bunch of us just like were like, "Hey, you want to do a hangout?" And so it was like this super casual like hangout that got put together. And it was like me and Jack from Reroll Ones and Maroc and Doom and Andrew.
Mephisto, Mr. Mephisto.
And it was just a really low key, and we just kind of woven out of like the normal paint-a-sode topics and real life and current events, and so it was just it was a very low key kind of paint-a-sode that was. It just felt really like vulnerable is probably not the right word, but it just very like authentic.
Cathartic, I think, was probably the answer for all of you.
Yeah, cathartic. So it was really good, and so I wanna spruik that because I felt like it was a good show.
Yeah, it's on Doom and Darkness's channel. I'll link it up there. It was good. All right, for myself, I'm gonna give a shout out to our good buddy Halo Twitch, who who put up his newest episode, which was all about dem gits. Getting on to gits, and he has a nice little breakdown of those. I am loving the way Haywo is doing his new army breakdown videos, where, because he had his old sort of here's everything in AOS all in one video, and now he's broken it out into the separate videos, and I think just the way he tackles it is fantastic. It is A+ work. It is absolutely the reference I would direct anybody to who was just getting into the game and was interested in an army and wanted to learn about it. I think the information he provides is so succinct and well presented and funny. It's just an incredibly well done video. So there you go. I will link that down below. So thumbs up. All right. Okay, let's talk about some hobby time. Anthony, is this where I show your?
Yeah, you can show this video I put together real quick this afternoon of so my buddy Stu, who is working on this Chaos Force, got me inspired. It was I had recently got a line of 3D printable files that were a Viking themed Kickstarter I backed, and when he was telling the narrative of his army, I thought in my head, well, I wonder what those files look like. So I hadn't looked at them. I was like, might be something in there that would look kind of cool. And I started printing the palisades for them and the gate, and it started really looking cool as something that could work. And then one small, one medium-sized building, and it came out nice. And he's going to use it as the basis for his display board for this army when it's finished up. And I just finished up some of it. So just a quick video.
Yeah, I can't show the video because I just now realized my player doesn't have a codec for the format you sent it to.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
So if everybody takes a nausea pill for just a second, I still have it set up on my hobby desk here, and you can get a kind of view of the palisades, the towers, the working. As I knock it down, the working doors with shields.
That seems very easy. If that's what happens when you touch the door, that place is going to be really easy to assault.
It's not glued together, obviously, because I have to ship this all over to Nashville for him. But you've got some huts there, and just a really cool scene that I really like. And he really is enjoying the pictures I sent to him in the little video. So. Yeah, when it's all done, it's a little bit bigger than 2 foot wide. It came in at about 32 inches wide, but in its current setup, it's only 15 inches deep. So we can still add another, 5-inch wall section or end the walls if you wanted to, and do something like a mountain behind it or something.
Right.
So he's got some options. So it'll just be a hair over your 24 inches wide. But we can keep it 24 inches deep, and he'll still have plenty of room to fit his army in there. So it should be pretty cool. There's walkways up on the top of the palisades, so he can put some troops up there like they're looking over. He can, make the gates open and some cavalry coming out, and all types of good stuff like that. So I was really excited for it, and so is he. So.
No, that's awesome. It looks like, like a bit of the, like you mentioned, the Norska village or whatever. It also reminds me of like a pretty super version of the Rohan terrain and stuff like that. But I like all the other details that are on that. A lot of the Rohan terrain is just like some wooden-ish palisades and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So that's super awesome, man. That looks great.
Yeah, I'm really happy with it, and he is too. So it should be cool. And I just love printing terrain anyway. So
no, it's great.
It doesn't hurt.
Tom, what about yourself, man? What are you working on?
I've been doing KO So, from a hobby standpoint, I've been doing my KO, and I got a bunch of it based, and primed, and initial coats, and a lot of the blue is done, and so I'm feeling really good about it. I think I'm gonna take my KO to NashCon. I want to I've given KO quite a bit of flack in their current incarnation, and so I wanted to kind of put my money where my mouth was, and take it to an event and show that I don't think that it can perform. I don't think it can stand up to the other stuff, but I'm gonna give it a good college try.
Sure.
yeah, so I've been working on KO and then digging through a lot of my hobby stuff because obviously I'd mentioned the Magic shift for my kids. And I only have one deck left from my first bout of Magic 20 plus years ago. And I know it's somewhere around here and it's worth about $1,700. So I'm trying to find that because I know it's here. So that's what I've been doing this week.
Nice.
Is digging through like all my old collectible stuff, trying to find a small box of cards.
That's very funny. And you're gonna come down and see me tomorrow and try to rifle through my cards and steal more of my stuff. I'm on to you.
No. After you gave me shit. Okay, you know what? By the way, I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna do this right here, in front of all of our guests.
You're fine, Tom. I'm just messing with you.
Vince, I apologize to you for taking your precious gift, the portion of your first collection that you gave me, that you told me I could do with what I wanted to,
sure,
and sold it a couple years later.
Yes,
that was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. It probably would be worth around 50 to 60 grand now.
Sure,
and that was a mistake. And I publicly apologize.
You're forgiven, Tom. You were always forgiven. But now I can't make fun of you anymore, or I'm the bad guy. Darn it! You've stolen my power as a bully. No! No, yeah, no problem. In all seriousness, if you do want to look through my, like, especially the uncommon stuff.
No. After you hit me with that shit, I was like, nope, that's it. I'm gonna go buy that 2014 Commander deck that has all the commons and uncommons that I was gonna raid you for, just so I don't have to put up with it.
The real issue you'd have raiding my collection is it stops as of like probably 6 years ago or something. Like I haven't bought a set in probably 6 years.
Which is fine. Like that's anyways.
Yeah, sure. I don't remember the last set I actually have.
Wait, can we just talk about this little head I just saw pop up behind Tom in the back corner? Like, Tom, do you have a dog over there, a little puppy?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to talk about her. I don't like her.
I just saw this little what? Now, come on, dogs are the best thing ever.
They are. I mean, she was the stray that we picked up, and I love because I have to. We like literally found her in the woods. No. It's so funny because like she's about a year and a half, 2 years, and she's a mix of like terrier and boxer and a bunch of other, and like she just wants to love me.
Oh,
like that's all she wants is just to crawl in my lap, and I'm just like I can't deal with you.
And you explained to her how you're a cat person because you're just evil and want to turn in your chair petting your cat.
I got cajoled into adopting her out of the woods by my kids because kids do that. So
good. But no, it's not kids that do that. Let's be honest. You want to see a grown man go, oh, just put a dog around. That's what happens. I don't care if you're, 20, 50, 6'5", 5'4", 100 pounds, 300 pounds. Oh, the doggy, looks so cute. That's just what happens.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. I love my dogs. Everybody knows that. No shame in that. There you go. All right. All right. So, for myself and my hobby time, I've been working on this big guy. Here we go. This big monster. I'm in the middle of working on some metal, so there's not much on him that's actually metal yet. But this is the Drakon or whatever from Creature Caster. He's a big boy. He normally has a big weapon that goes in his hands like that. Like this little thing here, but it's not in there right now because it has to be so I could paint him. Yeah, there you go. He's real big. I've got to do some medals. We've got to do some tattoos, stuff like that. So I don't know why I suddenly decided to do the medals when I know I'm going to have to do the tattoos and then varnish again. That was pretty stupid of me.
It's
but I wasn't.
Is that Creature Caster?
Yeah, it is.
And he just fits on the proper Shaggoth base.
Yeah, well, the proper Shaggoth base is a 92 mil. This
I know.
Base. So he's gonna scrunch. You're gonna be scrunching, buddy.
Like quite a few people have put him on, and he just his legs just fit on there, but there is no room for anything else, and he is well engulfing it, but
Yeah.
it's an awesome model.
But yeah, I'm putting him on that base. I've got that's what the base I just picked up was prepped over there. So, yep. I need to do his tats and then I'll varnish him again. I probably won't pick up with the metals. I was just like I had a few minutes before the show and I wasn't thinking, and I was like, oh, I'll put some metal on real quick. And then after I did it, I was like, what am I doing? So I'm just gonna I'll have to just reapply it. No big deal. It's fine. Okay. Or I can always just putty over it and then varnish. No big deal. Okay. So, gentlemen, let's talk about terrain, shall we?
Sure.
I love terrain. It's like gold.
Mm-hmm. Getting to the actual topic 30 minutes into the show, you know there's no news for AOS. All right.
Oh my god, yeah.
I know, right? Okay. So I want to start with a funny joke. All right? Would everybody like to start with a funny joke?
It depends on if the joke is, honey, I'm just going to buy one printer.
No, that is true.
Hey, I'm a year plus, only one printer.
Yeah, but you quit on everything like 30 seconds in and move on to something else, so you don't count.
I'm
Is your printer running right now, Tom?
No, but I actually have filament, unlike Anthony.
You would be wrong to sound like me. I have two 10-pound rolls that just came in, plus 14 other rolls that just came in from Ziltech. So, yeah, I restocked and restocked heavy.
Nice. My point is, Tom, if your printer's not running right now, then what do you... I could literally see Anthony's printer working in the background.
It's literally right here. Like, it's literally right here.
And you're just like...
Yeah, holding models. What is wrong with you?
Holding models, yeah.
Because I don't have a lot of table space, and so this is what I use to work right now. And it's really loud when I do shows.
I have 3 printers on a 54 by 24 inch space right there. Like it's just fine.
Whatever.
And I do apologize if anybody can hear them running in the background, but I'm sorry. They
Not
run
really.
24/7.
No, it's fine. Not really.
I've also tried to minimize their fan noise by changing out fans on them, but
Gotcha. No, here's the funny joke we're going to start with. You ready? The terrain rules in GHB 2019. Does everybody, you remember these things?
You remember when the world exploded when that happened?
Uh-huh.
Like, oh my god, the anger and rage that was the nerd community when these rules came out.
Yep.
I reread these today, as well as the FAQ right to it.
Mm-hmm.
And all I could think was, how did this ever
Go to print.
How is this a thing? Was my only thought. Like, looking back on it now, with the benefit of almost a year of hindsight, this section of how to set up the battlefield and how faction terrain interacts with it, and like the primary and secondary list and all this stuff, and how lacking it was of the actual terrain that's here. This is one of the most mystifying decisions in the history of Age of Sigmar. Like, this got into the book.
Well, and the best part about it is, like, they knew when they printed that what was coming. Yeah. They knew huge ziggurats, and
right, and they were going to print the Bone Tithe Nexus. Yeah. Like that was coming 5 months later. Right? They knew that army. That army was there because they ended up revealing the all that stuff at Nova like a month and a half later. Right.
No, OBR got shown at Adepticon.
No, OBR. No, Nova.
Oh no, you're right. It was Nova. Yeah.
Yep. Because remember, we saw the big trailer, and then we got to walk out, and they actually had the models there in the case, and it was like. We might have already been in teaser videos, or they were about to start for OBR, and they knew they were going to put on this ridiculous Bone Tithe Nexus, right?
Well,
it's
mind-boggling. Don't worry about that. How about you had regular Sylvaneth Wildwoods, and you had Skaven Gnawholes available, and you went, no, you just don't even get to play with those in our new rules. Screw you, people.
Right, sure. I start with a funny joke to say it was a comical episode in the history of the terrain of this game.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, what a ridiculous series of events that was. And the funny part about it, really to me, was that at the same time they had this like silly terrain placement rules, which really the appropriate way to uh to go is more what they're seizing onto, or what people have seized onto with lots of different 40k things, where I think that code has been cracked. So especially in 40k, where terrain and line side blocking is really important, they have the concept of like light, medium, and heavy terrain tables, and they kind of have to be mixed up, and like blah blah blah. The tournament, you have X number, like your X percentage of light, X percentage of medium, and X percentage of heavy.
Yep.
And the fact that it's varied, and that there will be some tables where terrain is really dense and some where it will be really light, forces you to like not build a skew build that's going to rely on one or the other, right?
Right.
And I actually think that's a really interesting idea. So it all just tells me that what I hope to see in GHB 2020, and I think this is the right way to go, is just to pick up an idea like that, right? Like just literally make a light, medium, and heavy terrain board and say, this is kind of the number of pieces you should use in light, in medium, and in heavy, right? And like this is what those tables would look like, and blah blah blah. There you go.
Well, they kind of did that when they said you have to put down 10 pieces of terrain, 5 apiece, and you have to pick 3 from the the bigger pieces and 2 from the little shits. But I still 10 I thought was a little bit. On some tables that can be really a lot of terrain, especially when faction terrain comes in. I mean, the 6 to 8 usually seems to be about the right number of varying size.
It also depends, obviously, largely, and this is the whole trick to it, right? It depends so much on what the size of the terrain pieces are, right?
Right.
Like, I have a lot of smaller terrain, so sometimes we'll have 12 or 13 pieces of terrain on my 6x4 table, but none of them are like bigger than this, right? So like, and I'm holding up something like the size of maybe like 2 CDs together, right?
Yeah.
And so when I would like, you can have more of that, but if you've got like the
anything I print,
sure, like the stuff you print, or like what was the big tower / what is that thing? What's that? Skullvane Manor. Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got like Skullvane Manor, you have to accept that like that's a giant piece of terrain, and you're not going to just say 10 anymore, right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, it's not. The footprint of Skullvane Manor
is pretty small.
Is like this.
Yeah.
Because of the way that it branches, like it's not a lot. Now I'm in the process of combining it with 2 other terrain pieces.
Sure.
In a larger base.
How about the Altar of Skulls? Is that one sufficiently big enough for you? That's a pretty big piece. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was, but they don't make that one anymore.
The Temple of Skulls. They do not.
Skulls, yeah. Sorry.
Right. So GW went away from, and this is one of the things that like up and down on. They went away from like playable terrain, which I'm okay with not having every piece flat and playable, like the new mausoleums that they make or whatever they call them, Sigmarite, whatever. And they started doing bigger, taller, like line of sight blocking terrains, which I prefer also. But with those, and spoiler if no one knows, all the stuff I print, I send to Nashville, and David T over there does most of the basing and painting on all that stuff. He puts everything pretty much on a base, so even a tall piece has at least a little bit of a playable area, so that troops can gain cover. It's not just line of sight blocking; it actually has a function on the table also.
Right. They always have a footprint, which I do the same. I always, all my terrain is based on something. I don't mean truly a base. I mean it's put on something. So there's always a footprint. So we can say, this is the terrain. Am I on it or am I not? Is a simple question. Are you on the footprint or not? Right.
Right, and I think that's a key thing that, in my opinion, all terrain should have at least like a 1-inch lip around it where bases could be put on it, and then becomes to me a playable piece of terrain. No matter whether it's a big rock outcropping or whatever, it has a actual playable piece.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. I tend to agree with that. So I think the reason I like the kind of light, medium, heavy concept is because in my mind the easy way to go with the new edition is to like, okay, you tried to make very exacting rules. New edition, I'm sorry, new GHB. You tried to make very exacting rules, and those were just like, clearly that's not going to work because you keep making insane faction terrain that's just going to break everything, and you don't want to limit yourself off from whatever you're going to make in the future. Like, I hope we see a lot more AOS terrain in the future. And so instead, just give like general estimates based on the size of the terrain pieces. Like, you know what you printed and you know its rough size, right? Just say like if the pieces you're using are of roughly this size, example, X feet by a foot, or 8 inches by 8 inches or whatever.
X square inches, X square inches, X square inches.
Sure, like whatever, can do something. Then use this, right? Use this kind of setup. If you want a light board, if you want a medium board, if you want a heavy board, right? And then let people play at the terrain level that they're comfortable with.
Right.
Right? Because ultimately, like, the amount of terrain I like might not be the amount of terrain that, somebody else likes if they want to roll at the table. But then at least there's people, but then at least with that, you have the framework to have a discussion. Because
we have a language. We have language to talk about it if we have that framework. If we don't, it's just like, I don't know, this looks okay.
Right.
This looks too heavy. Yeah.
And plus, that'll give new players more of a concept of the types of tables. And most importantly, it'll give new players the idea that I think is really important, that there isn't some golden mean of the exact right amount of terrain sitting on the board. Right?
Right. There are ranges.
There are ranges, yeah.
And there also needs to be language in there on, like you were saying, they know what they're printing on faction terrain, so that there's not where you roll up to the table and you're like, ha ha ha, you're playing some of that. There's no place for you to put a wood. Screw you.
Sure.
Like, that's not cool for anybody. Like, I wouldn't want to see that.
Well, I'm pretty cool with it for Sylvaneth, but for everybody else, it's bad.
Oh, right. I know, but I use them as the example because they were always I understand. Oh my God, they have 400 pieces they have to put out. But even like the Bone-Tied Nexus, that's a big piece of terrain. And like, oh nope, there's nowhere you can comfortably put that because the table's already set. Sorry, you're without. No.
Sure.
Make a little nudge, replace one piece of large or something. Whatever the ruling wants to be from TL, they need to be able to use that thing. Like, they paid money for it, they spent time painting it. Let them use it.
Right. Or as opposed to this rule, which I'm going to read now verbatim. In a pitched battle, faction terrain must be set up more than 6 inches from the edge of the battlefield, more than 6 inches from any other terrain features, and more than 3 inches from any objectives. This is the original pre-FAQ language I'm reading. In addition to any other restrictions that apply to it. Sometimes this will make it impossible for a faction terrain piece to be set up. In this case, it is not used. In this case, people riot. What? How did you print that? It is not used. This thing we told you.
Take your allegiance abilities and shove it.
Yeah. In which case, you paid money for something, and you've had this factored into your army, and you can screw you. You don't get any of that. Go home.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is par for the course with scenarios like total commitment, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. That does take away allegiance ability, so it's fine.
Or realm abilities that shorten shooting ranges 12 inches. Like, I mean, like I say it jokingly, but let's put this in context.
Sure.
Like, there are other things that are doing this exact same type of thing.
Sure.
The realm ability isn't like the absolute worst because you still can shoot. Like, you get treated. But the total commitment, though, the biggest problem with that, and I think we're all in agreement on this, it only hurt armies that did not need to be hurt.
Of course.
Like,
the key to all the things you just said, Tom, is I don't like any of them. So that's fine.
Sure.
Like, yes, I agree. Those are more bad examples. Let's not do any of that. That sounds great.
Right.
Like, I told you I don't like getting punched in the face, and you said, but what about getting punched in the chest? And I was like, no, that's also bad. I'm not doing either of those things.
If we could avoid that violence part of it, we'd be okay. Thanks, bud.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, what if I just used a little less force? No.
Just how about we just avoid that? Yeah.
Yeah, no.
So I'll be interested to see what we get as far as, because they have a chance to reform this. Obviously, they did the FAQ. What's it going to say in the new book? We didn't talk about terrain when we did our GHB 2020 predictions because I knew I wanted to do the show coming up because I knew you were coming on the show and we were going to talk terrain, Anthony, most likely. And so I wanted to save that for this because at the same time that they printed what is truly like one of the silliest things I've ever seen printed in a book, they also gave us 6 new scenery rules that I really like. Like, for the most part, I actually quite like the new scenery rules. So this is the secondary scenery table, right? So overgrown, entangling, volcanic, commanding, healing, and nullification.
Yep.
With the exception that healing is dumb and doesn't actually do anything. And like when you roll healing, I couldn't be more sad. I'm like, oh, so you rolled nothing for that one. Okay, that might as well just say NA. Because the chances of it actually healing a wound in the course of the game is, let's call it, minimal.
Well, I mean, it's similar to volcanic, though, on a roll of 6. You know?
Well, it is, except people who are alive can always take wounds, but people who are alive can't always heal wounds.
True.
See, that would be the difference. Now,
True.
volcanic would be next up on my list of being bad because it's not very volcanic. Like,
Yeah, no.
you can easily roll through a game sitting on volcanic terrain and never have it do anything.
So, for me, maybe unpopular opinion, I wish terrain played a slightly bigger part. Like, I wish we were back in the old deadly rules, and I wish volcanic was like on a 4-up D3, on a 6, 3 mortal wounds.
Sure, yeah, no, I'm completely for that. I'd maybe I'd go swinging in a different direction, where it'd be like on a 6, D6 plus 1 mortal wounds.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
But sure, we're in the same vein here. Yeah. We're agreeing. Volcanic, if the volcano explodes, that should be impactful.
Yeah. You remember when you really had to make a choice on if you were going to run through deadly terrain?
Sure.
Because it really could mess some stuff up that you were trying to set up or do. And now it's like, ooh, on a 1, I'm going to take D3. I don't give a crap. I'm running through it every time.
I have never, ever hesitated to set up or care about it. Like, I've never cared about deadly terrain. The only time it's ever triggered on me in a tournament game was when we were playing Meth and Joe, and there we were sitting up on the big volcanic river that Steve has on the Chaos Pillar table, and all of my Slaanesh heroes were sitting on the line, and he popped the volcanic in the first turn, and I was like, oh, yes, give me that sweet depravity. Just roll it in.
Nice.
So I was good with that. Then they all just turned and healed themselves right away because they all had the healing spells. So who cares? But like the other ones, like overgrown and entangling and commanding and nullification, I think can all actually be really impactful because like overgrown. The fact that it blocks line of sight to non-flying models is a really big deal, that you can have this huge piece of line of sight blocking terrain. Yeah. Entangling is like, you want to scare people from going into an area, make it entangling. People will avoid entangling like the plague, right? Because -2 to run and charge is crazy.
Yeah. Even overgrown on even just a small footprint piece of terrain can really, not can you not be seen so you can't be shot or something like that. But you then don't have line of sight to some of your models that maybe you want to buff with a spell or something along those lines. So it really can play, some real havoc on the game there, which I love.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, and commanding is maybe too good. Honestly, it's so potent.
Yeah.
And it's the one I called out originally as being like, I can't believe this isn't on a dice roll. Volcanic only happening on a 6+, but if there's commanding terrain and only I hold it, right, with my general, then I'm getting 50 points basically of value of my army every round. I will also say I do love playing commanding terrain with my Slaanesh Invaders army, where you've got 3 generals. Makes it a lot easier to really squeeze the value out of that. But commanding is just so unbelievably powerful. And honestly, it's the one I'd love to see wheeled back and make it like on a 4-up. Make it like everything in every book, because they've printed that rule now as a command trait for almost every army, right? On a 4+, you get an extra command.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
The hardest decision you have to make when you roll up to the table and you see that side has arcane terrain, this side has commanding. Oh, which one do I want more?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. That is always, isn't that the great divide? Right.
Especially for I love Seraphim. Especially for Seraphim, I'm like, ooh, that bonus to casting and dispelling, or more command points, which I love command points now. This army actually has a use for them. Like, ooh, what do I do?
Mm-hmm. Can we all admit that that Sinister and Inspiring are pointless?
Worthless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most
Plus
worthless
one and
terrain
minus
ever.
one bravery. Like
Don't
that's
care.
just not part of the game. I'm sorry. Like I know you wanted that to be part of the game, but you've written enough rules now that just isn't really that relevant.
I mean, GHB 2020 takes the bravery stat and drops it off of all the war scrolls and replaces it with something actual meaningful because
Sure. Like just the only like the very very corner of a corner cases where I've had it come into effect. You know, like it's not. I won't say it's never like
no.
never happened, but Jeezel Pete's, is it like
As the game has progressed, it has gotten less and less important to think about.
right, right, yeah. To me, that it's the two that I look at from the original one and go, wow, I don't care at all.
Yeah.
I'll also state that like Damned doesn't often make sense anymore. Right?
Yeah.
So, like, obviously, Damned is you can pick the unit and make a sacrifice. If you do, they suffer D3 mortals, but they can reroll hit rolls of 1. Like, that being in the same book where you have a command ability that lets you do that, like, I appreciate that it's an alternate way to get at that. But it's, for a lot of the armies that would want to use that all the time, they don't tend to have command point problems. So, I don't know. It feels like maybe Damned, if you're going to be taking mortal wounds, it could be something like reroll hit and wound rolls of 1 or something like that, right? And be like, oh, okay, cool. That would be actually, now I have a reason to do that instead of spending a command point, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So, but I like all the rules. And let's talk about setting these up at a tournament, because I think the code hath been cracked. Because somebody asked this question. So Soren asked, at your last tournament, did they use the terrain rules, and would you have wanted them to or not to? So the answer is at Steve's tournament, which technically the last tournament I went to was at the end of the year, which was Steve's tournament, which was beginning of the year, sorry, right before all this went crazy. So it was Holy Wars, sorry, in February is the last tournament I went to. And yes, Steve does use all of the terrain rules, but Steve's tables at the Holy events are like a third player in the game.
Right.
They are brutal, absolutely brutal, and beautiful. I mean, that's...
Yeah, they're like, they are a singular experience. You don't know what the word deadly terrain means until you've played on one of Steve's tables in the Holy events. Now,
yeah,
I mean,
until you take the monolith and go, I'm just going to run this through my Slanesh army and gain depravity from it. Yeah, suckers.
Unless that goes horribly badly. I had that thing. I was playing Slanesh, and Kenny Lull smashed the big tower into my Archeon.
Yep.
And he kept rolling the additional D6 mortal wounds thing.
Oh my god!
And he killed Archeon, and like Archeon had been minorly wounded by something, but he did 18 holy wounds to Archeon in like a pass of the tower, and just crushed him into the ground. I was like, all right, well, there he goes.
Well, that's how this game's going.
That's how this game's going. So, at any rate, I know his Frost Sword on Stonehorn had done some wounds to him. That's what killed him, or that's what it wounded Archeon. But Archeon put him in the sword, so get in the sword. The tournament I think cracked the code is what happened last year at NashCon, Anthony. That's what it was. And
so that happened because I'm a sucker for a good product, and David and Jacob Berry were talking about, because Rob was coming to stream. David always uses scenery rules anyway. They were going to handwrite on a piece of paper the sin. I was like, I can't have that. So I went to Propane Podcast, and I highly recommend their product. And I wish I had them with me, but they're tucked away in the closet over here. I bought, I think it was 12 sets of each side of the scenery table. So we had enough markers to do like 600 and some odd pieces of terrain. And after we set up each table, I took up a giant gallon bag, Ziploc bag, put them all in, turned it up, and we just walked through and popped it out as random as could be. Here you go. Yep. And just put them on the table, and you were good to go. And it seemed to work really well. I don't think anybody could complain about it.
No, it was so easy because it was so just so everybody understands, it was a tiny little plastic, like little placard, basically. And it said arcane or mystical or overgrown or whatever. And he printed them all and had them in just a giant bag. And I remember I did some tables, you did some, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's like this. These are his Seraphim tokens. I just happen to have those, but it's just hard acrylic, and it just had the word etched in it of what it was.
Yep, it was super easy to read, and it would just walk around. And we had them in a couple big bags, and it was just like you kind of blindly reach in, pick, and go, okay, I'm gonna do this piece, boom, set it on there. Oh, neat, that's this. Reach in, boom. You're just like, it's just you're fishing in it in this big giant bag, right? So you don't know what you're gonna pull out, and you're just like boop, 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 and you just hit them all. And then David went along behind and just like did some TO adjustments, right?
He was like, oh, this table has volcanic terrain on it, and there's a volcano on this table. We're going to put that on.
Right, like move that over to actually be volcanic. Doing some sensible things.
Weird.
Or like there was sometimes where just because it was random, and so for the most part what that meant is most of the tables were just great, but there was a couple where it was like, okay, this side of the table is entangling and sinister and deadly. And this side of the table has arcane, mystical, commanding. Okay, we need to
let's balance this out a little bit. Yeah,
right. And so I mean, David just went along, corrected the few tables that were kind of out of bounds, and we were off to the races. It was great. It was so easy to use it. People didn't have to worry about it. It was no stress at all.
Yeah,
it was perfect.
I think it worked out really well. I was really happy that I did it, and I've used those in couple of smaller tournaments I've helped run in the North Carolina area recently, and everybody seems to enjoy it greatly. So,
I just want to say, Autumn Lotus, I tend to agree with you. I love heavy terrain games. Like if it was me, I'm a heavy terrain guy all the way. I like a lot of stuff on the table. I like it when you have to take it into your plan. When the terrain is causing you to play a different way because it's in your way, or it's making you move, or it's going to block certain things. Like, yes, that to me says that terrain is doing something cool. Now, it can be sometimes fun to play on the soccer field. Like that's okay. Where you've got, I mean, battles did of course happen sometimes on completely open fields as well. Often, it's not like a rare thing. It's just I like having, in my personal taste, I love having like ruined buildings and big things and stuff you gotta walk around.
I love seeing. I made a comment one time on Giannis Wargamer chat, and I just said, I'm just trying to help people see in color with sort of printing terrain. Like it just makes the game more immersive to me, and it just looks better. And I went to the Nova Open the first year. Chuck ran it, and he ran a good tournament. But my comment to him was, your terrain is very lacking on these tables with the amount of people playing here. And this year, Chuck got in touch with me earlier in the year, and I sent him a bunch of terrains because he's going to up his game, because he realizes the players deserve a little bit nicer scenery to play on and make the tables a little bit better. So
yeah, part of the challenge poor Chuck was dealing with is, as when he took that over and didn't have the sort of resources, he was inheriting a lot of the 40K terrain, and a lot 100%. Of the 40K terrain was like functional, but
yeah, but not. And that was no knock on Chuck. Again, right, I mean, he ran a good tournament, and he was, use the people around you. Domus is great for that. Come Adepticon, where you have a bunch of people, he reaches out and like, hey, that person's going to make a couple pieces. He has the ultimate control over it because he's a perfectionist, with his tables too, which is perfectly fine. I mean, that's a, that scale of people, and you have good terrain on 95% of the tables is an amazing thing.
Yeah. I mean, Domus's work he was doing on all the Sigmarite, whatever they're called, the thing we can't remember the name of, whatever the new piece is,
the big shoe boxes.
Yes, was just gorgeous. Like he was doing all the marbling work and everything. Just an incredible amount of work he was putting into it.
He's an animal.
For filling out hundreds and hundreds of tables. I mean, he had dozens and dozens of those things lined up that he was doing them all. It's insane. What that tells me is get ready, because 2021 Adepticon is going to be some amazing tables for sure. So
yeah, definitely. I agree.
All right, right on. So I think that the rules are usable, but I'd like to. Is there anything else you guys would want to see changed on that base table?
No, I mean, that covers it for me.
Okay.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no. Exactly what we said. Get rid of the crap rules there that makes it unplayable, and just slight wording changes on some of these to make them a little more impactful. And I think it'd be great.
All right, so let's do a little pop quiz fun thought experiment. All right. Let's say we strike a couple off that are bad. Let's just imagine we create some space. What do you want to see added? You can pick, like, if you've got your choice to add one or two new things to the table. Like, we're gonna remove the dumb, boring ones, like inspiring and sinister. What are we adding?
That's a good question.
Do we have anything that gives Battle Shock immunity right now?
No, but again, is that really that needed? How about?
I don't know.
So the Seraphim terrain has it, but unless you're playing special rules, no other terrain on the board will ever have it. Being able to garrison terrain, random roll.
Yeah, unless you're actually using the garrisoning rules, yeah. And
right, which don't
printed a building, yeah.
Yeah, but let's have a roll for garrisonable terrain. You can actually, so everybody has an option to do it.
Okay, sure. So that thing is garrisonable in some way. Mm-hmm. Okay, I can see that. I like that. Tom?
What if instead of something like commanding, what if we did something that reduced? So the problem with commanding is it gives you command points that you can use for other things.
Mm-hmm.
What if you did something where it reduced the command points spent? So like command abilities in this area activated, or maybe you could do something like when a generic command ability is activated, or like once per turn, you can spend it on anything like a non-war scroll command ability or something.
Okay.
So like basically take something what's in commanding and tone it down.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
What about? I just had another pop into my head.
Yeah,
real quick. What about like the rules for the realm gates, where you have a piece of terrain that allows you to teleport to any other piece of terrain on the battlefield, but you have to maintain the same 9 inches away from enemy models, and all of your guys have to be within 3 to 6 inches of that terrain piece.
Kind of like an updated Baleful Realm Gate, basically.
Yeah, essentially.
But like putting that onto another thing that's already
onto another terrain, and it just this way you don't have to have two on the same table. It's just this terrain piece. It has that energy that allows you to teleport to any other terrain piece you want to go to, adhering to the guidelines of where you can and can't come out of.
Okay. All right. Okay. Cool. I would. How about something like haunted, or like cursed, and something like what that kind of thing is what I'm going for. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Where, in your hero phase, you roll a die, and on a 6, like this spooky ghost attack you, and you take some damage. But in addition to that, because of the unsettling nature of the terrain, the unit that's here cannot benefit from inspiring presence.
I like it. Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
So then, like, the only people who could be Battle Shock immune would be somebody like if you have a command ability or something that directly does it, right? Like a direct command ability that grants Battle Shock immunity.
Right.
Which, by the way, tends to be dead people who would be the least scared of the spooky haunting ghosts, right?
Right.
So
you're right.
So that kind of works. And I think that would be. I think that would be fun, having the ghosts come out and attack you every so often. I think like infested could be a cool idea. Okay, and I don't mean that necessarily in like not a diseased way, but like infested with rats, or it could be sort of plaguey things or stuff like that. But where the unit, when they're there, is constantly less able to defend themselves because they're getting clawed by tiny rats and creatures like that. And so, like, could be we could go the most harsh version of that, which would be neg 1 to save,
Yep.
right? Or you could have things like you have to re-roll rolls of 6 for your armor save, right? So kind of the inverse of a Mystic Shield, right? Like an anti-Mystic Shield, basically. So that could be fun.
I was just thinking, it's a plethora of good resources for ideas for this. Is what we talked about earlier, Herner's tables.
Yeah, sure.
He's got so many cool things. Like, some with certain armies you'd hate to roll up on, but that's the randomness of it. Like on his Maw Tribe table, if you're within X inches of this, you everybody gains +1 attack.
Yeah.
To their melee profile.
Yep.
Ugh, that's disgusting in some cases, and even more gross in others.
Sure. No, absolutely. Like, I would love to see something that's like Shard of Rage or something like that, or like Enraging or something like that, right? Because they try to make those one word. So Enraging would be the word. And like, if you're on or within an inch of the terrain, then you get +1 to attack with all weapon profiles or something like that. Just brutal. Like I like big bonus. I like bonuses as well as penalties, because if there's enough of that stuff, the problem is when there's only a couple good ones.
Yeah.
Like when it's only arcane or commanding or maybe mystical or whatever, it can really make the difference. Then if one side has that, if you just roll randomly, it tends to be that only one side's going to end up with a very usable piece of terrain. If there's like, if there's like 5 or 6 or 7 pretty interesting but pseudo potent items, then it's just going to get spread out, right? You can have them on both sides, or in the middle. So, and to me, that just seems better.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do like this one that Eric, that's Itter,
Okay.
+1 to run and charge.
Like paved road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Why not?
Sure.
You've got something that slows you down. You got one that speeds you up. Free cogs for everybody.
Absolutely. I know Tom would love that piece of terrain, and he would be on it all the time. He would just naturally... He would go 3 inches out of his way to get +1 to run and charge. Absolutely.
I mean, I would.
Yeah. It checks out. The math checks out.
Yep. All right. So, let's talk a little about faction terrain. This is something we've covered a lot of times, but I think it's worth just having a little bit of discussion about in this context, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of the broader board. So we've seen obviously the trend now with multiple pieces of terrain that are set up before everything else is set up. I'm making finger air quotes because obviously at a tournament that's not possible, and so you have to allow for the nudge or the whatever.
Right.
Should we still be going down but yet with the Seraphon one, that causes the funny thing where yes, they get a building that they don't necessarily get to use.
We get a building that anybody can garrison if we don't win that roll.
Yeah. Like it is the weirdest piece of terrain.
Yeah, that's I don't get that one personally, but okay.
So what do we what do you want to see? We've talked a lot in the past about the various terrain things, and how I think the only ones that I really like are the ones that are like have an incredibly strong verisimilitude to the race itself and what it's doing there, and it makes sense in its context on the battlefield. The Herdstone, right, being a great example of something where, yes, it looks propped up. It's obvious that the beastmen drag this thing around, and when the fight's about to start, they push it up, and it's literally held up by a bunch of sticks that aren't going to last, and it's there, just to exist for the purpose of them to get frenzied and go have a fight.
Yeah. Maw pot. Easy to drag along. Good to go. No problem.
Yep. I mean, that one guy literally has one dragon behind him all the time. So, sure. Yep. Clearly, they're just dragging around a lot of food. Whereas some of them, like the corn altar, I understand your story that the slaughter priest just raises the altar from the ground with a blessing of corn. Nice try.
That's all bullshit.
Yeah, that does not work, because if the slaughter priest has that ability, make 8 of them.
Yeah.
Why did he stop at 1?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I mean, I'm just going to drag this big half mountain that I carved in the shape of a moon with me everywhere I go.
Sure.
Because that's how I roll.
Yeah, here's a secret trick for the armies of the mortal realms. If you see a giant rock formation that looks kind of like a moon, don't have your battle in that area.
Right? I mean, yeah.
Legitimate.
Get you right there. See, that's some big brain thinking right there. At any rate, and don't ever get me started on the Bone Tie the Nexus and what that is doing at all of the OBR's battlefields as they're setting up this gosh darn it, I can't think of Pitch Black, the second one. It wasn't called Pitch Black. Whatever. The one with Vin Diesel. Yes. It's the bad guys' edifices they left behind.
Indeed.
Yeah. So what do you want to see out of future faction terrain? Tom, what's your hope for future faction terrain?
That it goes away.
We're pretty sure the Lumineth don't have any. So that's it. We're pretty sure the Giants don't have any. So there's 2 in a row.
Yeah.
It's going to happen at some point. So, I mean, is your answer just please do less of it unless it absolutely makes sense?
Yes.
Is that really the answer?
Yes, that's exactly it.
So what would you want to see out of something that makes sense? Like, we're going to be remaking armies. So,
right.
Like, they'll be probably up on the block or things that we might see are like, all the big maybe category is like Mortal Slanesh. Okay, maybe they just you get to use the Fame. Yep. Right? Maybe or maybe not. Maybe they just don't have one. Redoing IDK, which I would love for them to just clean up the rules of you either get 2 half boats or 1 full boat. Why do you get 2 full boats? It is the most egregious thing that you get to like put down those 2 giant boats. Okay.
That's a lot of real estate that you just chunked out.
It's too much. And by the way, I understand people say IDK use those boats to win, and I agree right now. But when you make a new book, please fix the rest of the army, and thank you.
Just make the army a little bit better and
get that shit out of here.
Yeah.
Just cut it down. 1 full ship, 2 half ships, great. Not 2 full ships. You're out of your mind.
Like I hate those ships so much.
I know, as do I. They drive me bonkers.
I love general terrain, just not faction terrain.
The Feculent Narwhal is another one in the really good category, I think, because again, it makes sense as the Nurgle army marches forth. These gross trees just kind of spring up and represent the spreading of the Plague Father. Okay, cool. I'm down with that. And they're small. They're rather unobtrusive. Yeah. A+, like, that's fine.
Would it be too much?
If Doc gets a reprint, you want to see a piece of terrain there?
No. Here's the thing. Would it be too much to say that no more actual faction terrain? They don't get an actual piece, but they have rules and they turn on a piece that's on the table into something.
I would love that so much more.
Yeah. It's just, let's be honest, traveling with a lot of terrain, no matter what, Sylvaneth is obviously the worst, but traveling with a Bone-Tied Nexus or this Seraphim Pyramid, that's a pain in a ball bag I don't want to have to deal with. It's the size of the rest of the army combined. Like, what's the point? So just have that piece of terrain over there became our holy spot that we're fighting over. That piece of terrain got blessed by Cain, and that's where we think his, Iron Heart now lives, and we're going to go get it. Whatever the case may be, why just do it that way? I think it'd be easier.
Yeah, somebody in the comments, Scott, asked, what about the Sylvaneth Wildwoods? The Sylvaneth Wildwoods were fundamentally misdesigned. The correct answer was it should have been a Wildwood, and they place it at the beginning of the game like everybody else's standard 1 terrain, and the rest of it should have been exactly what Anthony just described, where all their spells and everything they did just overgrows the existing 100%. Terrain pieces, and they now count as Sylvaneth Wildwoods. It would have made the army so much easier to play. It would have made the army a lesser financial investment, much less annoying to transport. It would have been more fun because you could even take over enemy terrain pieces and make them part of yours.
Amazing.
It would have been it is the low-hanging fruit slam dunk that was so obvious and right in front of them. We've been saying it for a year and a half, by the way.
Yeah, they missed that.
Right. And they missed the boat on that. Like, they should have 1 wood, and it should be 1 wood. And yes, that would mean if you bought a bunch of woods, all the rest of those woods go to waste. And I'm sorry for your luck. But now you have a much better set of rules.
Yeah, 100%.
So, you know, I guess that's good. I guess, right?
Yep.
I will say Autumn Lotus just cracked out a pretty nice idea. Imagine if they made another Cainite statue, like the thing on the back of the cauldron, obviously, right? Yeah. But 4 times the size, it's a terrain piece that can be activated with its own War Scroll rules. So, like the regular avatar, you can activate this one too.
Well,
and it could get up and walk around and punch people. That would be amazing.
Laser beam Cyclops style out of its eyes.
Yeah, it'd be like the never-ending, the never-ending story or whatever. Yeah.
Or just make it so that the altar the altar statue, when based, is the terrain piece, so it actually ever sees the tabletop.
It does see the tabletop all the time.
Yeah, a lot
on the back of Cauldrons of Blood.
Well, that's what I'm talking about as a standalone piece.
Yeah. No, I want a giant 4-up. We got to see if there's an STL file that looks kind of like that we can print in giant size, Anthony.
I can look into that.
Yeah, I don't want nothing copyright infringing. It can be the avatar of Rage.
Yeah. No, I'm against the copyright infringement stuff.
No.
Along those lines, IDK, if anybody follows me on Twitter, they have seen probably my most favorite piece I've printed, which was the dragon turtle with the mountain and trees growing out of its back, and I printed it. It's almost 12 inches by like 8 inches wide. It is amazing. And why can't the IDK just have a nice turtle that swims around with them? But like 3 times the size of the turtle they have. That's terrain.
Just a really big turtle. Yeah, amazing. I mean, dragon turtles are amazing. You're not gonna get me bagging on dragon turtles. If you play D&D and you don't love dragon turtles, I don't know what you're doing with your life.
I'm not gonna lie. I literally tried to convince my wife that I needed to buy a CR10 Max, which is like 3 times the size of my current biggest printer, just so that I could print that thing like almost. Like Jacob Berry put the idea in my head. He's a bad influence sometimes.
Sure.
Print it as a Warcry board, like make it big enough to be its own Warcry board. So I was like, yes, I need to do this.
Do you have any resin printers right now, Anthony?
I do not. That's something I've been thinking about heavily recently, but it's a whole new beast. It's a whole new thing, and It's quite toxic, and I don't have room in this office for it, so it would go in my garage and so on and so forth. With that being said, if anybody knows resin printers, Elgu is releasing a new one on the 10th of this month for pre-order that is a decent enough size at a decent enough price that I might actually get into. That I just have to find a way to hide it from my wife for a while so that she doesn't kill me.
Does that have a different? Do you have to do like a different setup and slicing and stuff with that?
Completely different. It uses a completely different slicing software. You have to use supports on 99% of stuff because of the way they angle it. But it's a completely different support setup where instead of encapsulating the entire thing in like solid supports, it's just some chutes that come up and then touch in specific points. It's not that hard from what I've seen doing it. I haven't personally done it, but I know some people that have done it, and I follow other people that do it. And in theory, it's not that hard. It's the whole cleanup process afterwards, because you don't want the uncured resin on your skins and whatnot, and then you have to do some post-processing afterwards like you would anyway. But sanding that is you're still sanding resin, which is not great for you to breathe in and all that kind of stuff. And in general, most resins have an odor that they produce that could make you affects people differently. Some people don't have any problems with it. Some people can give them headaches and make them queasy. So you want to be in a well-ventilated area. And the biggest problem for me and what I use printers for, terrain, at the good price points, they have very small build plates. So I wouldn't really be able to use it for most stuff that I would want to do. They have come out recently with some really big printers, but then the cost is exponentially more. And this new printer is kind of like in the middle so it might fit the bill. I'm going to do a little more research and make a decision here soon, but it's possible. We had talked once before. You would approach me about doing some bases, and I told you the technology that I have in FDM printing, it's not really suited for bases, in my opinion, because the detail quality is too. You get the printing lines too much. Like I've got it down to where they're minimal and they hide pretty well, but when you want something like a base, you want none. So you definitely want resin. And then you got to be careful too, because sometimes some of the chemicals you put on there, like if you were to put on other resins for water effects, they can melt the resin or they can warp it badly. So it's a whole nother ball. Yeah. If anybody follows Luke's APS on YouTube, he did a video not too far back, and he was using like crackle paint and like hobby store crackle paint because he wants to do a bigger board, but he was testing it on bases, and he had some resin printed bases that he hadn't primed yet, and he just put the crackle paint on it, and when it dried up, it bowed the bases like tremendously.
Interesting.
So yeah, there's a whole different size. Maybe he didn't cure them long enough. There's a whole variables to that too, depending on what resins you use and all this other stuff too. So it's not to bore everybody with that, but it's a whole different animal that you got to do a little bit more research on before you just jump into that.
Yeah. No, it's just interesting because I mean it leads well into what I wanted to talk about, which is you've obviously been 3D printing so much terrain. We saw that set you did earlier. I know that I think most of the like going to NashCon's an absolute joy because of the incredible tables that you've done. Frankly, what 90% of the printing for in most tables. So yeah. And I mean, Tom, how much terrain have you printed on yours? I mean, has that been largely what you were using yours for as well?
I mean, it's the only thing that I do. Like, here's a box of stuff that I just got done. I have, like, you can't see it, but I have an entire, like, my entire bookshelf up here is printed terrain. I have an entire box that's with a friend that he's using to play, like, Mordheim with. So, like, yeah, that's why I bought it. I bought it specifically for printing terrain.
Nice.
It's a great asset for it, and you can do there's a lot of cool files, and that NashCon has grown in people, and we've been able to grow the tables because of the amount of terrain I've been willing to donate to the event. I technically own all of it. Me and David have an agreement. If I ever wanted it, I can have whatever terrain I want back, but I give it to him of free will to paint and use because I enjoy the hobby. I get great gratification out of seeing the tables done. And again, I really want people to enjoy playing on cool tables. So I really do enjoy that. Same reason why I've asked for nothing but Chuck to cover shipping costs for me to ship him terrain for Nova. Not a penny more. That's all I said is please just pay the shipping. It costs about $25 a box to ship almost a table's worth of terrain each time because there are some larger pieces.
Right.
And I said, if you'll just cover the shipping to go to it, I cover all the rest, which is not cheap. It's not overly expensive, but it's definitely not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. I think last year we estimated, not counting like electric and everything to run the machines or the cost of the machines, just in digital files I purchased and materials, filaments I purchased just for NashCon. I spent somewhere around $2,500 for the tournament last year just so that I could produce terrain for tables.
Wow.
Yeah. Now I buy a lot of files because I like different things.
Sure.
And I buy a lot of filament. And there's also some other things affecting that. Like I print bases for Dreadsaurians and
Sure.
Corn Dragons that I sell on eBay. So there's some of those printed. I've printed movement trays that I also sell on eBay for the different sizes, the coherency trays. So those are factored in there too. But they honestly use minimal filament. But I don't care. I enjoy it. It's another hobby. I've got tons of plastic models sitting here unpainted, and I have tons of plastic buildings sitting here now unpainted that are all over the place. So whatever, it's fun.
Nice. Nice. I dig it. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's the right answer to supplement the tables because it just adds so much to what's there. You can do, like, one of the main things is, and let's just go down this rabbit hole for just a moment. How much do you like verticality on your table, Tom? What's your sense about? You understand what I'm saying, right? Like having verticality on terrain.
Yeah, I like verticality. I don't feel like it's necessary, but I like it. Okay. I like line of sight blocking is more important to me.
Okay, so you're more about the girth of the terrain, as it were, and its height, sure. its ability to block terrain.
Sure.
So you're more about girth than height.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
There needs to be a balance to both because I've printed some pieces of terrain that you could put 5 pieces on a table and you would struggle to. If you didn't want to be on the terrain, you would struggle to put 10 models on either side of the table, right? Because they're just so large. Which having one of those, on a table is nice. But I like having different levels because it's different eye catching and it shows a scene a little better and those kind of things. And also it can be advantageous for some models with flying. You can post stuff up there sure. and whatnot, or it's just overall, I think it sets a good scene, and I like the picture that it shows when you're playing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you're doing like the small skirmish games, obviously, if we're talking about, Warcry or something like that, or in the world of like Necromunda or something, then obviously verticality is the name of the game. You've got to have vertical space to go up and down. In the regular game of Warhammer, I do like having a big piece or two that has some vertical height to it at least, so that if you do have a flying unit or a flying hero or something, they can kind of swoop up there, land on it. I think it just adds a great deal to almost the visual of what's happening when the game is going on. There's something cool about that monster, that hero perching up there on top of the thing, looking down over the battlefield. It sounds so stupid, but to me there really is that like sweet moment of the hero or the monster being up there just surveying across the battlefield, like looking to what they're gonna do. So I don't know. It's a thing to me. It helps. It spurs my imagination. So I don't know if you're in the same category or not.
Let's just look back at the base that your Archeon, Slaaneshi, Alariel conversion is
Archeon,
on.
Yes.
Yeah, that is just like this menacing, I'm crushing / coming over this build. Like the scene it sets. You can do that same thing in table play if that model's on a normal base and you had a piece of ruined terrain there where you could prop that up there. It would look equally as epic.
Yeah, I mean, she does bring her own terrain with her for sure. Just she brings her own building. I always make sure my centerpiece models bring their own terrain with them. Mm-hmm. Like they have to be able to bring. Like if they're going to give me a 160 mil or 130 mil round base, I don't know what to do with that besides put a piece of terrain on it and then put the monster on top of it. I mean, why would you ever put something on the ground, especially if it flies? That makes no sense.
Just amazing.
That's a waste. It's a complete waste. Okay. Anything else is there anything else, gentlemen, we haven't talked about with GW terrain? Is there any other terrain in Age of Sigmar or GW terrain or anything like that? Is there anything we haven't hit on that you think you want to touch on for the future? Think about like go forward, anything like that.
I mean, I would like to see GW put out some nice general terrain for the fantasy scene that isn't faction terrain. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's nothing wrong with using some of the faction terrain as general terrain. I mean, Domus at Adepticon last year had gnaw holes that he had painted up for an ocean board, and they looked fantastic on there. And, you can do some stuff with, I mean, if someone really wanted to spend the money, you could probably make 2 pieces of generalized terrain out of an OBR monolith thing, just, ruin out part of it and stick the top end on another base. Yeah. You could have 2 pieces of terrain. So you can turn that stuff, but I would also still like to see some stuff like that Altar of Skulls or whatever that was called, and the Skullbane Manse, and the old Watchtower, and some stuff like that. Just some generalized fantasy terrain, because while I do love 3D printing stuff too, there's nothing wrong with the stuff they make also, and having the extra diversity in there.
Yeah.
So I do like. I would like to see them produce some more generalized stuff of their own too, and of substantial size too. I did not realize how tiny the penumbral engine was.
They are very small, smaller than you think. Yeah.
Oh my god, it's like the size of my. Now, mind you, I have a fat hand because I'm chunky, but like it's the size of my fist. And I'm like, that's just.
Yeah, there's
when it was described. Yeah, when it was described, I was like, ooh, it's supposed to be something like oh, this is kind of a little small for my taste.
Underwhelming is the word you're looking for. Yeah, I mean, you can basically fit a normal human-sized 32mm person inside the thing. Like one fig could sit in the middle of it pretty comfortably. That's about the size of the engine itself, right?
Yeah, where if you wanted to play like Stargate, I could put quite a few up on this thing.
Oh, nice. We threw out an idea a long time ago that I think is worth resurrecting here. Realm terrain boxes.
Yes, do it.
Right? Wouldn't it be better? Like, don't you want to see the box where you can go by the? I'll give you my pitch, because this is the one I'd want to see the most. I want to see the Heish terrain.
Yep.
Okay.
What would that look like to you?
All right. In the art, it's always these big, looming, slightly angled Washington Monument style obelisks and pillars and sort of ziggurat type of structures. Very very sharp angles and tall, potent structures. I think that is exactly what I would want to see. I think just floating, like they do floating stuff all the time. So we all know what I mean by floating, right? I don't actually mean okay. So like the Night Haunt are floating creatures. They obviously do have a base point connection, but they appear to be very airborne. So floating pillars and things like that, I think that would be amazing what they could do with all sorts of different styles of obelisks and ziggurats. Not necessarily like the Seraphon pyramid, right? Theirs.
Right.
I mean, truly just almost like something that isn't meant to be occupied. Much more angular, much more of a triangle, like a sharp, maybe like, very small stepped ziggurat or something like that, right? Those sorts of things. Yeah, I think that would be... There's probably so much more. Because off of the floating pillar, they could have other floating rocks.
Oh, yeah.
So it just seemed that, like, the whole piece was kind of airborne, and all of those rocks are defying gravity as you put them all together.
Mm-hmm.
I think that'd be amazing.
I'm a pretty big fan of that idea.
Tom, is there any sort of terrain you'd want to see in the future?
I don't know. Like, I'm a big fan of the castles. I know a lot of people aren't. But I would love if we had some type of return to that type of, like obviously we talked about the realm terrain, but like I would have loved to have seen like a death castle, right? Like what we saw with OBR in their like set piece stuff got me really excited. These big skull edifices and all that. But obviously all that was constructed. So I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, the obviously we had the big Hell Fort,
right?
And that was your chaos fortress. Let's call it fortress, because that was really the fair way to say it. Castle conjures the wrong image. That was truly a fortress, right?
Yep.
And in the Wrath of the Everchosen, we saw Death take over their main fortress there, which was clearly a Hell Fort in its description. The way they described it, it felt very much like they were describing that piece of terrain.
Yeah.
But that's another way they could go. If we're talking about box terrain sets, here's one. We could do a Cities of Sigmar run.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And it could be some of the buildings in the city. It could be walls, embattlements, and there could be different collections of it, just like there is now right now for the Sigmarite stuff, right? Where you can kind of, it's modular and certain pieces can go together, and you have the big giant, here's the all-in set, but here's the small components too. And so then you could have, yes, some of the buildings that look more classic of Hammerhall or Anvil Guard or stuff like that. But you could also have big walls of like Greywater fastness with, you know, flat areas that you can put artillery and defend and battlements and stuff like that.
Yep.
And you could easily have those mix and match in various kits.
Yeah.
And it would be build your own city of Sigmar, literally. Right?
And then just sell the ruined versions of those also. So you have the nice version and the ruined version of that terrain. Boom.
Yeah. I think that'd be a winner. I have to imagine people would snatch that up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Earlier this year, I printed a bunch of terrain from a Kickstarter. I'm working on the last piece, which will be the centerpiece for the table. And it all is like, reminded me of like an Azir look, like Sigmar's stuff. And that's what David's having it painted up as for NashCon. And it looks like that would be like a Azir table. It just looks so cool, like it would fit into that scene. So when I post stuff up on Twitter, I try to give a little description, but have a little fluff with it too, just for fun, for my own sanity. And everything I put up with that was something Azir based. Recently, I did a couple things that were like, oh, in Gur you find this shrine, which I'll go over here. Or this vine goddess statue that is.
I saw that print, dude. That thing is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's releasing like a standing version of it that he's calling. This is Shrine of a Fallen Goddess is what he calls this one, and the next one that's coming out in a couple days is Goddess of Light, and it's like essentially this figure but not broken, standing with a staff. I'm looking to print that as soon as that gets released, and lots of cool stuff. But I mean, yeah, I really like the idea of like the realms, because when I print stuff, that's one of the things that I think in my head of like, what realm is this from? What kind of story can I tell? When with IDK, it doesn't necessarily have to be from a realm, but like I bought a fat mat that is the ocean. And so I have a complete setup of underwater Atlantean ruined terrain that we're going to paint up, and that'll be your underwater ether sea, board, which is just, I think it's pretty cool. And that's where my dragon turtle will wind up as a piece of terrain. So just, I always try to have stuff like that. And then theme tables in general, which I just think look cooler than just pieces thrown out there. Like we had the Elven table, which could also have been you could put that in my opinion, in Gur, because it was more Wood Elfian. It could also be though in Haish Light.
Haish, right?
Yeah. Yep. And then we had, the Dwarven table, which, pick your realm. Could be fire, could be Akshi, could be, could be wherever. So I mean, I like seeing that and crafting that kind of narrative in my head as I'm working on stuff too. It just it makes it a little more enjoyable to me too. Oh, I'll show one more. My shameless plugs. This I'm actually I printed this with a couple different people in mind. It's an Elven Tower. I had some rainbow filament left over, and I shared this on Twitter, and it's a shame that this really does need to be painted, because it just looks so cool in the rainbow filament.
No, it's
but
awesome.
Someone who likes elves that I hadn't seen on Twitter in a while, a couple weeks ago, I reached out to him. If anybody knows Bryce, and I said, dude, I haven't seen you on in a while. Are you okay? If you need someone to talk to, please reach out. And also, if I can put a smile on your face, I'm going to mail you this when I get a second, because I think you'll enjoy it. And we talked for a minute, and he obviously is more than grateful to be getting that and enjoying it. But that was
it's a beautiful.
That is awesome.
It came out cool. Yeah.
Nice.
So.
Yeah, I think the key to me is there's so much more to explore. We all want to be able to construct our version of the realms, whether that means the cities or the individual realms they've been told, and we just haven't been given enough. Like, it's fine. I don't mind constructing our own and using the 3D print stuff because there's great stuff out there, but it does feel like they should be offering more of an ability to create and construct the realms in the kits. Right? This is the new land you've told us is where we're all fighting these battles, and yet we still have a relatively limited ability to construct that thing.
Yeah.
And that's strange to me.
I agree.
So yeah. All right, gentlemen. Well, anything else you want to say about terrain before we call it a night? This was good.
No, if you go to an event, I hope it has great terrain on the tables because I find, my personal opinion, I enjoy the games much better with that, and I think most people do. So hopefully everybody can play some games soon where they can play on some great looking tables.
I agree. And Anthony's Twitter will be down in the description. You should go follow him. He always shares out pictures and awesome tweetish updates about all the stuff that you're printing, and it's amazing. So when you printed that fallen goddess statue, that blew my mind, dude.
Yeah.
I loved that one. That was
a cool one. When he released that file, like I have a backlog of stuff I want to print a mile long and some stuff I want to reprint and whatnot. But anytime I see a file that grabs me, it instantly, once the next printer gets done with what it's doing, I don't care if I'm in the middle and have to print 4 more pieces for something, it will go on because I have to get one of them out there so I can see it and share it with the world. Like I just, and that was one of those things. It's just so cool.
awesome. All right, Tom, any final thoughts?
No, I like terrain. I like painting terrain. It's my happy spot.
It is. It is your relaxing spot. That's what you go to when you need to calm down. So maybe we should all paint some terrain this week. I guess that's the answer.
I can bring with me as much as you want me to do tomorrow.
No, definitely not. We're going to be playing Warhammer, buddy. That's what we're going to be doing. So with that, I will say thank you very much, Anthony. An absolute pleasure to have you on as always, brother.
Thank you. I enjoyed it greatly. Thank you.
For all of you out there watching, thank you so much. Do please hit the like so other people can find the video. As always, look, it's as easy as moving your mouse from like here to here. Like, look at that. It's just there to there. It's that far. You can click it right there. So click that like, and I really appreciate that. We really appreciate that because it helps more people find the channel, find the video. As I said at the top of the show, I know it's been a tough week, so everybody out there, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay kind. So with that, I will say we'll see you all next Wednesday. Bye-bye.